This webinar was brought to you by Small Farm Canada and the Ontario Woodlot Association. My name is Julie Harlow. I'm with Small Farm Canada, and I'll be hosting this webinar along with my colleague, Denise Faggy. I'm excited for three things today. One is to introduce Small Farm Canada's webinar series. The second reason is to have our first topic to be woodlots. And third, to hear John Pineau. This is the first in a series of informational webinars that Small Farm Canada will be producing. To start with, Woodlots really acknowledges the importance of this resource to Canadian farmers and Canadians in general. Who better to start the conversation but John, a person who has the education and experience in forestry on a national basis in both private and public sectors, big and small, for-profit or not-for-profit organizations. John is currently the executive director of the Ontario Woodlot Association, as well as being a part-time professor at Algonquin College. He also sits on the board of several organizations working to the benefit of Canadian woodlots. Before I hand it over to John, I have one housekeeping item, and that's regards to questions. If you could please put your question in the Q&A portion of Zoom. You can find that by hovering over the bottom of the screen. Denise will be managing the questions with John to ensure that they all get answered. So without further ado, here's John Pineau, live from Pembroke.
Thanks, Julie. I'm just going to share my screen and get that all set up. How's that? Can you see my screen okay? Right on, good. I'll just say thanks to Small Farms Canada and Denise and Julie for the opportunity to speak today. It's a neat sort of thing that we can be just about anywhere now and do these webinars, and I hope folks get a lot out of it. I've kind of put together this presentation with the idea to give you an idea what's going on in Ontario, but I think so much of it has application and can be transferred and used in other parts of Canada as well. But definitely it's Ontario centric given my role and what I do. So without further ado, I'll start with a little bit about the Ontario Woodlot Association and who we are and what we do. So we're a provincial nonprofit association with members, and we have a vision of ensuring the sustainability of our woodlots and our privately owned forests column into the future. Our mission is helping each other become the best possible stewards of our woodlands. We're very much into extension and knowledge exchange and just, basically getting together at woodland walk and talks, workshops we put on ourselves and sharing what we've learned, what we've experienced over the years, and helping each other to be better stewards. We have pretty straightforward values too. We want our woodlots to be sustainable and productive, ecologically healthy and diverse, and spiritually and physically renewing. This is all out of a new strategic plan we just developed this last year for the next 5 years. And we're rather proud of it. Our value proposition: we are a community of woodlot owners that live, work, and play in our forests. Together, we restore, manage, and advocate for healthy forest ecosystems. So that's pretty well us in a nutshell on a philosophical level. We have a lot of member value. We're a very active and engaged organization overall. We publish a quarterly magazine that gets rave reviews, the Ontario Woodlander. Actually, there's an issue that I'll talk about a little later on that you're all going to get a PDF copy of, and we're rather proud of that issue. I'll bring it up a little later on. Monthly newsletter, the usual kind of stuff, website, database, we do e-commerce. We're really getting active on social media, reaching out to people far and wide in every way we can in Ontario. We've got an annual conference like most associations and organizations. It usually gets a lot of attendees. And not the last few years, of course, we went virtual with the pandemic, but it's still good, and we'll be looking forward to seeing everyone a lot more in the future face to face. We do videos where we walk around people's woodlots and share those and have Q&As afterwards with folks to, again, see what people are doing on their woodlots. Just endless number of activities, over 100 across our 21 chapters. We're coming up on 3,000 members in total and growing rapidly. But yeah, everything, workshops, seminars, tours, courses. Could be a chainsaw course, safety course. It could be just a woodland walk and talk and getting to see what someone's doing on their property. I was at a session last week in one of our chapters where we learned about a backyard nursery and an individual member who was growing up to 1,000 oak every year just in his backyard and then transplanting them to his property elsewhere. So there's all kinds of things going on across our chapters. Yeah, and an e-store and a blog where we can, again, exchange information. We're trying to get modern and active, and we advocate on behalf of woodlot owners, members, and make sure that our voice is heard in various levels of government. So a very busy, active organization. There's just a chapter map. Like I say, we have 21 chapters. There's also a provincial chapter, so kind of 22, but that's for folks that don't quite fit into a chapter and are just kind of not really affiliated with any one particular geographical area. There are a few of those. So lots of folks in these chapters, and like I say, pretty well all of them are active and engaged and doing 2, 3, 4, 5 events a year that really help us to meet our goals and objectives. Just wanted to take a step back and mention that we, the Ontario Woodlot Association, are part of the Canadian Forest Owners, and that's basically the counterpart organizations to the Ontario Woodlot Association. So if you're tuning in from somewhere else in Canada, there is a similar organization to ours out there that does things on your behalf and that you could join. And there are a lot of landowners in Canada, forest landowners, about 450,000. And we're about 10% of the managed forest land in Canada, 20% of forest production in Canada. So that's the actual production of lumber and other products. And there's 25 million hectares of managed forest land that's privately owned. So we're pretty big. There's a lot of folks out there. Again, as Canadian Forest Owners, it's my counterparts, all the other organizations that can represent you. And there's their logos. And if you're interested in checking out one of these organizations like the OWA in your province or region, just go to this forestowners.ca members link, and you can get in contact with folks there. They're all great folks and representing private landowners, private forest landowners across Canada. So back to Ontario, just want to kind of give you some context as we move into sort of the management side of things and what we can do to some of the challenges and issues we're facing. There's about 15 million hectares of privately owned forests in Ontario and 180,000 owners. And that's about 14% of total harvest. So a lot of wood comes off of those privately owned forests, sustainable wood. And we're very much in a way our own sector. We're very active. We're not as well organized, I think, as we could be, and that's where I think the OWA can really grow and make a lot more happen for this sector that's pretty significant in terms of what's going on with our forests. So I guess stay tuned. We'll see what we can do. This is kind of a pictorial or a graphic geographic representation of privately owned forests. The kind of pink color there is what's private forest. And you can see, of course, we're very concentrated in southern and central Ontario. And as you get more into the far north, northeast and western and central Ontario, it's far more publicly owned land, or crown land as it's called. And these areas tend to be following highway corridors and that sort of thing, and where there's municipalities, small, medium-sized, some cities along, say, the Highway 11 and 17 corridor. And some of these are owned by organizations and companies too, but there are a lot of private individual landowners up in those parts of Ontario, and we're planning to expand our chapter organization and membership up there, and working towards that as well. Right now, we're very concentrated down and around here. That's kind of as far as we go right there, but there are a few members up here, and we'll organize into chapters soon. So traditionally, historically, the woodlot on a farm was used as a source of food, of fuel, and some income, supplementary income. It's kind of the way things have evolved. The average size in Ontario ranges about 28 hectares, but it can range 10 hectares to 4,000 hectares. And again, there are about 180,000 of these woodlots in Ontario. My own is kind of small. I've only got about a 2-hectare woodlot, but it's nice and it's productive. My grandson has a Christmas tree business based in there, and we have evidence that moose are on our woodlot. So that says something. It's near Mattawa, Ontario, near North Bay. So economic activity, there's a lot of underutilized potential. So I think I said something like 14% of the harvest, the sustainable harvest for wood products, comes off of privately owned forests in Ontario, but there's so much more potential, and we're trying to realize that. There's a great bit of habitat that's locked up in this, and particularly in southern and central Ontario, where there's maybe not enough of a forest cover left, and it's important that we retain that forest cover if we can, and make sure that we keep things biodiverse, and Indigenous vegetation needs to be kept in those habitats as well. There's a major carbon storage capacity in privately owned wood or privately owned forests in Ontario. So something like an estimated 857 million tons. So pretty significant. Some of the challenges that we face with woodland management, parcelization and urban agricultural development. And if a farmer can make more money or be more viable with a piece of property that is farmed rather than his forest, there's a big temptation to develop that and to clear it. And we're hoping that we can kind of stop that and make sure that some portion of farms are kept as woodlots. Certainly in our membership, I should say, 70% of our members also identify and classify themselves as farmers. So we have a lot of farmers in our membership with woodlots, and some, about 30%, just woodlots. So it's something that everyone wrestles with, and particularly in southwestern Ontario. I've actually got a call later today to talk about tree cutting bylaws and the clearing of land in southwestern Ontario, which is a bit of an issue because there's not much forest cover left there, and what's left we want to try to retain and make viable for the folks that own it. There's negative perceptions of harvesting that's pretty pervasive, and I think we've slowly but surely met that head on and face that, and people are starting to understand that it's okay to sustainably manage forests and harvest trees over the long term and do it right, do it with the best practices. But some still don't think that. There are a lot of costs to managing forests, but if you manage them right, you can have a net sustainable income or positive revenue over time. And that's been proven time and time again. And we really have a lack of good information and knowledge of what private forests are made up of in terms of an inventory, what tree species, what heights, what diameters of trees, what volume, what biomass, all those things, even down to ecosite and ecotypes. We need better inventory, and we need to work on that. So those are some of the major challenges. The parcelization, I just want to mention that in urban development, there's always that going on. But what I find is that it's happened in a lot of places. A lot of woodlots are very discontiguous in southern Ontario and orphaned and fragmented kind of from each other. And that creates a problem too. That creates a challenge, not only in terms of habitat and species getting in between areas of different habitats and forest cover, wildlife species that is, but it also makes it difficult for, say, a landowner or a farmer to get someone in to help them with their forest, to manage it better, to even do a sustainable harvest or a thinning on a plantation that's really needed desperately. That kind of small parcelization has become quite an issue, but there are ways that we're going to deal with that, and we are dealing with it. So here's where I start to really talk about the solutions and the opportunities, and this is really what OWA has turned itself around to do the last 5 years or so. Start getting into cooperatives where we kind of pool these parcels and these fragmented forests on farms and make it viable economically to manage them better, to get a sustainable harvest done, to do the thinning, to do the management that's needed. We've also started a private land forest inventory project, and really got our sort of knowledge and our understanding of what needs to be done and how set up. I'll talk about that a little bit today. We're into Forest Stewardship Council certification and the carbon credit program that will really help us to help landowners to, again, implement the best possible management practices and maximize the carbon storage and sequestration, manage their carbon on their forests, and carbon education and training for landowners, again, adapting to and mitigating climate change wherever possible. So we're working very hard on that with our partners and our members and a lot of different organizations. I'm going to mention some other programs of note later in the presentation as well. There's some really good programs for afforestation, like the 50 million tree program run by Forests Ontario. There's the 2 billion tree program that's off and running, and Natural Resources Canada is overseeing that, and there's lots of opportunity there. I want to talk about the Managed Forest Tax Incentive Program in Ontario, and I'm sure there's similar sorts of incentive programs in other parts of the country. Maybe some of you are aware of those. I'm not particularly, but I can talk about MIFTIP, as it's called, the Managed Forest Tax Incentive Program. And all of these have really significant potential to contribute positively to ecosystems and the resiliency, diversification, wildlife habitat, and enhancing biodiversity. So lots of good opportunities for farmers that have woodlots or folks that just have woodlots. So our cooperative pilots, they've been running for just about 2 years now, and they're located in Huronia, which is in and around Barrie in Ontario, in the Kawartha area, which is Peterborough. That's where I kind of grew up, more or less, for at least the last part of my childhood. And we're really focusing on these orphaned and fragmented plantations that need management. They're basically falling apart. They're collapsing. We were really good and have been really good at tree planting for decades and decades, but the follow-up, when we plant trees, they need to be eventually thinned and tended and managed. That follow-up just didn't happen or wasn't happening, particularly on private land. So we started these co-ops as a pilot to see what we could do. And so we bring together landowners within a reasonable distance of each other, and we create an economy of scale where it can be afforded to have, a registered professional forester write a prescription, do an inspection, do some tree marking, do a little plan, that a MIFTIP plan that enables the landowner to manage the forest. So there's enough landowners nearby, usually farmers, that need this help, and it makes sense for them to bring one person in, or one good reputable company in, to do all this and invest that at a reasonable price. And then a harvesting contractor, usually affiliated with a mill, is also able to come in, and it makes sense economically for them to try to harvest and do this forestry on that scale with 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 landowners. And it basically allows us, not only to help the landowner to make a little money and get things back on track in terms of their management and tending, because they can do it periodically for decades to come, every 15 or 20 years, for instance. But it also, again, improves the health of the forest, the ecosystem integrity and their processes, and the biodiversity, and positive for carbon capture and storage. So these pilots so far, I think we've had between the two pilots, I think we've had about 8 properties that have been harvested and sustainably harvested, and it's gone very well. The wood is being used for commercial use. It's usually red pine plantations It's very well managed and prescribed, and the tree marking is done according to standard. And the mills get some good fiber, and the landowner gets a healthier plantation. They make a bit of money, and it all seems to work really well. So far, so good. We want to have a few more landowners participate, and more are in the queue to have this done, so that they see if, or we can see that it works economically for everybody, and on a scale that will allow us to adapt and move it out across southern and central Ontario as a full-blown program. Also, we're monitoring plant biodiversity. We got a protocol that's been created by a U of T, University of Toronto master's student in forest conservation, and she's produced a protocol that allows us to look before and after the thinning that's done in, say, the plantation, to see if indigenous plants are reestablishing themselves. Sometimes we have to treat the stand or the forest area before we harvest for invasive species. This can include buckthorn or dog strangling vine, things we want to get rid of so that natural indigenous species can come back. So that's a very important thing we've been working on too. So these are really helping us to understand the good potential of having forest owner cooperatives. And I think we're going to probably see an application of that in further areas of Ontario. So far, so good. Private land forest inventory project. We did a pilot project as well in one set of United Counties, and they had what's called Lidar. It's laser-based remote sensing, shot from planes usually, and laser pulses hit the ground or hit trees and create a 3D point cloud that allows us to know a lot about the forest in terms of the heights and the diameters of trees, all the things you need to know to have a really good forest inventory. So we use this LiDAR from the United Counties of Prescott and Russell, and we analyzed it and modeled it, and we're able to create something that's really missing in private land in Ontario, which is inventories, forest inventories. And it worked out really well. And we sought further sort of validation in analyzing the economics, something similar to our cooperatives that I just talked about. And we were able to see some test cases and understand, what's going to be the benefit if you have good inventory in terms of managing your property and the economic output. And it seemed very positive as a result. We had a lot of students involved from different schools, different colleges, doing validation of the LiDAR. We always need boots on the ground to kind of look at the remote sensing, collect some data, compare it to what was remotely sensed and how we interpreted, analyzed it, what we did with it, to make sure that we're accurate there. So students collecting data, measuring trees on the ground for a series of plots to validate the LiDAR inventories we create, very important. We had some 200 plots in 200,000 hectares on the pilot study. So what we've been able to do is develop a full-scale project where we're going to produce private land forest inventory for the whole province of Ontario. And we have many partners involved. We're going to get the silvicultural history, where trees have been planted, where forest stands have been tended or not, where things have been harvested and not, and really get a really thorough, good understanding of private land forest inventory for all people, all 180,000 people that own a private forest in Ontario. And that's a 5-year project. We were successful in getting some funding from Environment and Climate Change Canada to do this, just announced about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And we're gearing up to apply what we learned in those pilot areas in Prescott and Russell in Eastern Ontario. So there's just so much potential here. Again, the same sort of thing. We can manage the forest better for farmers, for anyone that owns a woodlot. We can make them healthier, more ecologically sound, and improve carbon capture. We've tied this into a big project that's starting right now. And we've actually leveraged a lot of the funding from Environment and Climate Change Canada. So we've got a $3 million project to do this, and we've staffed up to make it happen. So it's the Nature Smart Climate Solutions Fund that was enabling us to do this. We were successful with our application, very, very excited by that. And we actually had an announcement, this is a couple months ago, and Anthony Rhoda, the Speaker of the House of Commons, is my member of Parliament up in the Mattawa North Bay area, and he made the announcement, and we had a lot of folks out to hear about it. And it's just a news release. If you want to look at the presentation later and read the news release, you can. Pretty excited. This is the biggest thing that pretty much has ever happened to the Ontario Woodlot Association, and we're very proud, and we will successfully deliver on the project, as will our partners, who we're grateful to. So many have played a part and a role in getting us to this point where we can produce a really good private land inventory. There's a lot of data out there, a lot of this Lidar data, the laser-based data from remotely sensed platforms that we can use to make this inventory, and it's just ready for us. And more is being taken all the time, and we'll use a lot of imagery too, like high resolution satellite imagery and different types of imagery from different platforms to supplement and augment the Lidar work that's done. Our members are pretty excited by this opportunity and the potential to have inventory. It'll really inform and help people to have better plans and do better management and get their best management practices in place based on good information and data. So one other thing we're doing right now, and this again kind of is really about the Forest Stewardship Council certification program that we have. We've more or less merged with the Eastern Ontario Model Forest, and they're charitable, but it's now a charitable arm with the Model Forest, and probably a new name coming soon, and the Ontario Woodlot Association, which is nonprofit. And one of the things we inherited was this Forest Stewardship Council program, certification program. We have an umbrella certificate, so we can help woodlot owners to become certified if they've got a small business or they want to have more opportunities for selling their wood fiber to a broader market. Just to show that they're implementing the best possible management practices. It's just a great opportunity for woodlot owners, small and big, and organizations that own private forests. So this is something we're hoping to grow, and certainly the inventory project will feed into that, and the carbon management that we're trying to do and help people to do better. And it's looking really good. So that's part of our merger with the Eastern Ontario Model Forest. I kind of talked to this already, but it basically helps us to, well, it gives us a source of revenue, certainly, but it helps us to give our members and attract new members. It gives them an option to, again, ensure that their forests are managed to the best possible standards, and particularly with carbon management and climate change. So some of these other programs I just wanted to mention quickly. Forest Ontario runs the 50 million tree program, and it's a great program. I think they planted over 3 million trees this last season, and they're working slowly towards the 50 million mark. It's a program that allows a landowner to tap in and basically reduce the cost of doing some needed planting or planting they want to do to enhance their forest productivity or the health of their forests. So it's been going on for some time now. There's something like 7,000 woodlots or project sites that have been planted, 18,000 hectares, and again going quite strong and doing well. And I think they're tapping in as well to the 2 billion tree program, although I don't know if that's happened yet or not. But the 2 billion tree program announced by the Prime Minister, I think about a year and a half, 2 years ago, is now running. And it's basically set its target at planting 2 billion trees over the next 10 years. And it's a commitment to nature-based climate solutions, the same program that basically got us the money to do the inventory of private forest lands in Ontario. So it's off and running. It's something that I think really enhances or enables existing programs to build their capacity or increase their capacity to plant more trees. And that's the secret. I think there has to be some level of establishment, or let's say infrastructure and nursery capacity, that sort of thing, that can be enhanced to make this work. And it's off and running. So we'll see how it goes. So far, I think this first
John, we
Yes.
have, Wayne would like to know how to get involved in the forestry inventory project, who they should contact, and he's in the Orono area.
Yeah, that's me. Just get a hold of me and we can set you up, no problem.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, we'll be looking for landowners to let us put plots on their property, for one thing. We're going to reach out and we'd bring some students in and we'd measure plots or establish plots and measure them in forests where we're doing the inventory, so that we can validate what the Lidar and the imagery is telling us once it's been analyzed and turned into inventory. So that's a big way. And then it's going to be, as we produce this, it's going to be fairly open access. This isn't something that we hide behind a wall for the most part. It's something that everyone can use once we've created it for their properties. So no problem there. So yeah, in terms of the 2 billion tree program, this first year or first year and a half, they put out almost 60 million in grants. There've been 29 million trees planted in 2021, 150 different species. So off to a pretty good start. I think capacity will really kick in and build, and you'll see this being a successful program. It's a huge program. You can't kind of go from 0 to 60 in a year. It's going to take a few years. So a great commitment to fighting climate change. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the Managed Forest Tax Incentive Program, MIFTIP as we call it here in Ontario. It's a great opportunity for a landowner to basically get a plan produced, and there's all kinds of incentives and subsidies to do that in different conservation authorities and in different programs, but it's a good investment in your property. You get a forest professional in, like a registered professional forester or someone who's good at writing these plans, and they'll take a look at your property. They might use the inventory eventually that we'll be producing. They'll help you to determine what's best and what you want to do over time. They might help you to write a prescription. They might help you to tree mark or recommend people to tree mark. And they'll just basically work with you to make sure that you're managing your forest to its most positive potential. And that might be recreational. It might be for biodiversity. It might be for wildlife viewing. It might be for a little bit of fiber and revenue, some wood products. It can be all those things. You can have your cake and eat it too. But it's up to you in terms of what direction you want to set in that plan for your objectives. But a professional can help you to do that. And the investment, the return on the investment is really good. You lower your property taxes, in some cases up to 75% annually. Now, if you're already part of the farm tax incentive program, this probably isn't for you. But if and you're probably realizing significant gains or positive benefits in your tax return, but municipal taxes can be lowered if you haven't implemented something else with this Managed Forest Tax Incentive Program. I really encourage people to look into it, get a good plan done based on what your objectives, your goals are. If you're just looking for the tax break, I don't think that's a good incentive or a good idea. You want to go into this with the full understanding and knowledge that you want to do the best for your property and your forest. So this has been a long-running program in Ontario for decades now, and we're very closely aligned with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry to help people to get into this program. We promote it a lot. We have a directory of Forest Service providers, including registered professional foresters who can do these plans, approve these plans. A lot of our staff and volunteers are involved in this. And it's very closely aligned with the whole Forest Stewardship Council certification we do. They're very complementary, but the idea is that, you know, we can help you. Our association can help you to make this happen. That's a friend of mine.
So John, Asif is asking specifically for the private forest inventory assessments. How long does the process take? What exactly is the process? And what's the criteria? And I'm assuming they can go on your website to learn more, but I don't know if you want to address those.
Yeah, I don't know that we can get into that level of detail during this presentation, but give me an email and I can get into that. Again, the whole thing is a 5-year process. It depends on where the Lidar is available and up to date. And we generally are getting free and open access to this Lidar data. It's, you know, again, the laser-based remote sensing information, point clouds. And we can make that happen really quick. We can convert it to inventory pretty quickly if we got the Lidar. And then we get the students out with good supervision, mentorship, and a really good protocol to validate that Lidar. And it can take, you know, any amount of time. It can take, you know, a few months to a year. But we got 5 years to do pretty well all of Ontario. So we're trying to set the priorities of where the Lidar is the newest, the most available, and where we can get students to do the validation as quickly as possible. So there's a lot of moving parts to it, but, you know, any given area, depending on availability and the age of the Lidar and the data, the raw data, we can turn it around pretty quickly if we're working at it. But there's a lot more that can be said about that whole thing. So yeah, give me an email. My email's at the end of the presentation. So so the idea with the Managed Forest Tax Incentive Program, again, is we want to inform the plans, help promote the plans, make sure they're the best possible plans that a woodlot owner or farm woodlot owner can produce, and help the Forest Service providers to make those work. And it might be, you know, using our inventory again, part of the protocol of the cooperatives that we're doing. You know, maybe we establish more cooperative type groups in various areas. So, you know, it's all kind of coming together if you think about it. And that's what we're moving towards. So the last part of the presentation, how am I doing for time, Julie? Pretty good for time?
You're doing pretty good.
You're
It's
good, John.
Okay.
It's 12:37. You still got 23 minutes left.
Okay, so I think this last part I can finish in about 10 minutes, and then we'll have time for more questions. But I wanted to talk about kind of the big issue that our members are concerned about, and so many are concerned about. And you can see this happening anecdotally, but, you know, the data is pretty irrefutable. I've read a heck of a lot on climate change and the impacts on forest and assisted migration and all kinds of things that we're looking at, and, you know, what trees are going to, you know, be needing their ranges adjusted, and how things are going to go. But so we produced an issue of the Ontario Woodlander, again, our quarterly magazine, and this was in December 2021, so just last December. And it was, you know, without being too subjective, it was stellar. It was just a great issue. We pulled together some of the really good scientists in climate change and forestry, people that I've known for years that just have incredible knowledge and understanding based on their research. And they wrote some great articles. We got some articles from other folks that are, you know, observing anecdotally what's going on and trying different things, you know, sort of the more applied and practical stuff that you'd see at Woodlots and particular members trying different things. But we really wanted to provide something that informed and also gave you some solutions and some things you could try. And we hit the mark right dead on. Again, you're going to get a free copy, a PDF of this one, but lots of good science and good practical advice. So this is all about managing our woodlots for climate change. And what came out of this, I've just kind of condensed the key points. You can read this at your leisure and get more into the detail, but resilience is the key. And resilience is just basically the capacity of a system to deal with change and continue to develop. And it's really, part and parcel of what we have to do with ongoing climate change. Humans and nature are strongly coupled, one social ecological system. We're all in this together, and every part of what we're experiencing with climate change is interconnected, and everything that happens will have other reactions and happenings in other facets of our lives and livelihoods. It's a much better form of sustainable development if we realize that, and we develop something that takes all that into account, the interconnectivity of things. So again, being resilient is the key, one of the fundamental keys in all of this. So we need systems that are resilient and can adapt and can change. Diversity is also really important. It's recognized that a great diversity of tree species increases the resilience of forest disturbances. So yeah, you want to try different tree species that maybe traditionally don't survive or didn't survive at where a particular location is, a particular region, particular latitude, whatever. Try it out and see how it does. And some are equipped to deal with it, some aren't. And we've got to start doing that. That's the whole basis of assisted migration and what's happening there. But more and more woodlot owners, more and more of our members are trying new and different species and seeing how they do and preparing for that. The analogy is, this idea of a diversified portfolio and investing. You want to try different things and have different things there in case something doesn't work, doesn't survive, or doesn't give you a good return, and then you kind of hedged your bet, so to speak. That's a key thing that we're trying, but you don't want to be helter-skelter about it either. You want to make sure that you're doing this in a very regimented and thoughtful way, and that's where Forest Service providers and professionals can help you, and certainly our issue of the Woodlander focusing on this can help all woodlot owners if they take a look at some of the recommendations that are in there. So we have about 130 tree species native to Ontario, and some are very tolerant of different kind of conditions and different kind of environments. That's a higher plasticity, so they can handle greater variations in conditions, environmental and let's say weather conditions, that sort of thing. And some can't. They're very, very narrow ranged in terms of what they can handle for a photo period, for temperatures, for drought, moisture, all that sort of thing. So this is something we have to keep in mind for particular species. And there's a lot of good research, and it's well established what species do well where, and those that have a broad range, and those that are more narrow in the range of what they can tolerate and how they will survive. So that's something we have to be aware of in terms of plasticity over time. And again, that's really well explained in this issue of the Woodlander. And one article we got from it was a nursery owner, and he produces a lot of trees for people to plant, millions of them at his operation in Ontario here. And he sort of just said, try some different things that I've tried. And he very much recommends certified forestry experts to consult with, to talk about your management practices and what you generally want to do. And he again says, increase your woodlot diversity at the genus, species, and genetic levels. So, you want to try different species in the same genus and different variations within the same species. There's a lot of variation within the species level too, the genetic level. Try that for a more diverse woodlot. Allow opportunities for trees to regenerate within a woodlot. Like, give it time. You have to test it over time, and basically use all that you're learning and document what's happening. Like, don't just do it again helter-skelter. Document what you find, what you see happening. Get expert opinion on it to guide what you do in the future, your management decisions, that sort of things. So you do this, and it's a bit of a longer term sort of approach, but it's essential. Trees take a while to grow usually, and some grow fast, some grow slower, and you gotta realize that and understand it. So there's a lot of good discussion around that. So yeah, just further to that, don't overload your woodlot with different trees and shrubs, maybe between 1 and 10 new species, and see how they take to the conditions. That's sort of, you can try a whole bunch of different things, but anything above 10, and you won't be able to keep track of it probably anyway. And plant them along the edge of your forest, and it's easier to monitor and see how things are growing. Remember, it is important to diversify, and that goes back to plasticity. Some trees are not handling climate change as well as other varieties, and there's some documentation and research on that too. So again, you can find a lot of this in this issue of the Woodlander. It's a really good little guide. So that's pretty well it. I hope that's kind of helped folks to get an idea of what possibilities and opportunities are out there. Again, I'd encourage you to take, you'll have a copy of this presentation. If you're in other parts of Canada and Ontario, get in touch with the other woodlot associations, my counterpart organizations, and they'll have all kinds of things that they can do to help you out. Here in Ontario, yeah, join us. We're incredible value for money. I think we're 50 plus HST a year, and you get all this and more from joining our organization. That's my sales pitch. But we're addressing head on the issues and the challenges that woodlot owners and farm woodlot owners are facing and dealing with, and addressing their opportunities and that as well.
So John, we have a question from another Wayne. He's asking if there's any best management practices specifically on dead ash and elm cleanup and replanting.
Yeah, so dead ash and sorry, elm?
Sorry, yes, elm.
Yeah, so it's that's been something that so many of our members have been dealing with, is the mass die-off of ash with the emerald ash borer. I'll start with that one. Yeah, when you clean it up, use it very locally. Don't transport the firewood, of course. Realize that ash is going to regenerate. It's not going to become extinct, black ash or any of the ash. The black ash particularly regenerates. It'll reach a certain age, and then the emerald ash borer is going to hammer it again. The best idea, again, clean up, take care of that. Don't spread it, and then let it regenerate. You might want to diversify what's in your wetter areas. Black ash likes to get its feet wet, as we say. It's more of a likes the wetter soil. You might want to plant some different species there that make it a little more diverse, but you realize that your black ash is going to come back, and I'm quite confident eventually we're going to beat it. There will be trees that naturally or with our help become more resistant to what it does, and as well we'll have better controls of the emerald ash borer with time. So there's to me, I get a ray of hope. There's going to be a positive outcome eventually. We're going to have to put up with a few decades, maybe more of this nonsense. Elm, sort of the same thing. Clean it up, don't transport it, that sort of thing. There's some really good news on elm, though, out of the University of Guelph. I was reading a paper a few weeks ago, or maybe a month or two ago, but they've definitely bred, and it's not genetic manipulation. They've bred resistant saplings or seedlings, and elm are going to make a full comeback. They're the same sort of situation. They're not extinct at all. They're fine, but they reach a certain age, and again they succumb to the disease. But these resistant ones, I guess they can't produce them fast enough. Everyone wants them, and they'll be resistant to Dutch elm disease. And it's a good news story. After, well, I can remember as a kid, all of them dying off when I was a little kid, decades and decades ago. It's a good outcome now with some good research and science there. But yeah, clean them up, and don't transport them, burn them, use them for firewood, whatever. Yeah.
All right, John, one more question with regard to Lidar. What altitude is required for Lidar? Could you capture the same information with the drone?
Yeah, very, very good question. All these are good questions. LiDAR can be taken on multiple platforms. So I don't think satellite is really conducive to LiDAR. It's definitely fixed wing or helicopter. Fixed wing is the most common for aerial LiDAR, but there are drones with LiDAR sensors on them. We're actually going to have a couple of them as part of our inventory project. And you can do some low-level remote sensing on individual woodlots and have a pretty decent point clouds. These point clouds from the returns to the LiDAR, the hits on the vegetation, the ground, it's huge data sets, but our computers can handle them now and process them now. But yeah, it can be fixed wing, helicopter, drone, no problem. It's just, again, your scales are going to be different and how much territory you can cover. We also have been working with a terrestrial LiDAR unit where it's a backpack. You walk around the woodlot and it'll record all the trees and that in front of you within about 150 meters. It's called a geoslam, and it's pretty cool. And yeah, some of the images you saw in my presentation actually were from the geoslam. So yeah, there's all different platforms for LiDAR use.
There's some amazing ideas there, John, for managing the woodlots, but also climate change. And yeah, I was glad to hear that advice about ash. We have a fairly big contingent of ash trees that we're working at cutting down over time, and it's it's heartbreaking seeing it, but I'm glad to hear that there's hope.
There's lots of hope.
Yes, thank you. That's where we go to the forest for hope. Thank you very much for your presentation. I've learned a lot, and I'm going to join the Woodlot Association.
Oh, thanks. That's great.
So thank you. And I don't see any other questions. If there's none, I think we will close our webinar, and thank you to Denise as well for your help and other people here at Farms.com. But a special thank you again, John, for all this great information.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And anyone wants to reach out, my email, the phone, whatever, happy to chat.